All right, welcome. My name is Nathan Myers. I'm the director of the Master of Public Administration program at Indiana State University. And I'm here with Austin Nettrouer, who is a graduate of the Master of Public Administration program. And since completing that program, he has been an intern with the city of Terre Haute, Indiana, in the mayor's office. And now he is a Ph.D. student at the University of Oklahoma. So he's going to kind of share his experiences as a recent graduate from the program and kind of his professional experiences subsequent to the program. So Austin, pleasure to have you. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the introduction? Anything else I left off?
I think you hit it perfectly. Yep, graduated here from MPA, and then even prior to that, also got my bachelor's in political science here as well. So, and yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. He is a graduate of both an undergraduate and a graduate student of Indiana State. Actually similar to Alex Barrett, which was the last person that I interviewed. So that's actually kind of interesting coincidence there. You're at the moment you're a PhD student at the University of Oklahoma, as I mentioned. So, what kind of led you to decide on a more academic kind of career path?
I would say that it mostly started out, or at least the thought of it started out freshman year of undergrad. Early on, freshman year undergrad, I think with most people that are unfamiliar with higher education, as a first generation student myself, is like usually you think like law school is usually like what a lot of political science students think when entering the program. But as I got to talk with my undergrad advisor at the time, Dr. Chambers, as I sort of got an inkling and took some classes, I was like, I really enjoy the higher education environment, especially with academia. So the thought that I could, one, help teach like the next generation of students, especially those that are like first generation, Pell eligible, similar like ISU's demographic, to not only do that, but also be able to exercise like academic freedom and do my own research and attribute to like the field of political science as a whole, and attribute to the field that I'm currently being taught about. That really started to form more so. So I knew I wanted to be political science, didn't quite know the subfield. And then we sort of went through, COVID, and there was some uncertainty, and there was always, what's the next right step? And after talking with you, Dr. Myers, late into undergrad, I'd learned of like what the MPA program offered was an excellent extension, at least. It was the subfield of public admin. So seeing, how administrations actually operate, everything from the budgeting to then the academic side was like the methods that are used, for like program evaluation, policy analysis, stuff along those lines. Having that conversation with you said, yes, I want to keep pursuing education, pursue the MPA program. And as we went into it, then I knew for certain of like, yes, this is the right move for me to do. And then that led to me scouting different PhD programs that sort of tailor to that toward either administration or policy. And then the program at Oklahoma definitely has a lot of policy analysis as well as public admin faculty. They have a little specialty in like education policy that I was really interested in, a few faculty members there. So that's what I'd say is sort of how it started, at least substantively from the beginning. I knew I always wanted to study political science. But I think being in the academic environment is really what solidified that this is something I wanted to keep doing.
Kind of to go back to your experience working in the Terre Haute mayor's office.
Yes.
As far as that position is concerned, what would you say is the most rewarding thing about having worked in the mayor's office during that period?
I'd say the most rewarding part is seeing a lot of your work actually come to fruition. So in dealing with people, I think directly. I know sometimes, at least with like an undergrad political science degree, at times it's maybe a little more federal centric as far as how politics runs and operates. Whereas with getting the education from the MPA, that really helped also bring it down to or how state and local operate, and then see it applied firsthand, using my studies directly, seeing how Terre Haute specifically runs and how we're structured. But then some of the work I did, a lot of it was sort of research into different local policies that other cities do, that the mayor had a vested interest that we apply to Terre Haute. But like there's a little bit of like legal research with that on top of just how actually those policies actualize. So if there's a policy that Fishers did, looking up to, it could be articles, either, statements from the mayor there of like how this policy is actually worked out from its implementation, and stuff that the city needs to consider if we were to do that ourselves. I'd say that's the most rewarding part. And it's also just fun seeing how much influence, or, refreshing, I guess is the word, how much influence and work that people in the city do that leads to direct results, as opposed to the federal narrative that it always seems like it's slower or it takes a while, it does this and that. Local was definitely very refreshing to see that happen firsthand.
And I know you're really new to being a PhD student, but I will ask you the same question as far as what you've done thus far. Keeping in mind that this is about roughly midway through your first semester, but so far, what do you find to be the most rewarding or the best thing about PhD studies? Maybe in comparison to undergraduate and masters.
Absolutely. So to preface, with the PhD and with mine specifically, your first half is preparing for like comprehensive exams. So you have to select 3 subfields underneath political science, which mine is public administration, public policy, and then American politics. So I have to test in 2 of those fields, which means that I have to take a series of classes that range from theory and theory development to how it's sort of actualized in today's, what does public admin or policy look like today, and how does it operate, alongside methods and the methods that are used to study the discipline and how it's applied in that sense. So that's where I'm at currently. And then, of course, after I pass comprehensive exams, the second part is the dissertation, which most people think of, where you're working toward that original piece of research. You form a committee of other faculty that then evaluate that, help you get there, and then you defend it, at the end. So being in that first half, there's a lot directly transferable from MPA, especially when it comes to like theory and methods. I mean, that just happens to be the classes I'm sort of taking this semester. But I think what's most fruitful is that it's a lot of information thrown at once. There's a huge challenge to it, but you're constantly applying like old theories to new ideas and how we see the development of public administration over time and what the priorities were, how it shaped policy today or administrations today. And then from undergrad, I think from our undergrad political science degree, it's refreshing to delve more into public admin and more thorough, intentional with your studies. So I would say, I would argue that I think being the most rewarding, fruitful part is just the extent to where you're in it. I mean, in the study itself, more directly. Yeah. Oh, I can also add to that of being I'm also a graduate teaching assistant. So now I'm starting to help co-teach different classes. So I have 25 or 50 students total, 25 sections every Friday. And actually just got back from doing that. We had exam review today. So it was, speaking of a lot of information all at once, it's fun to start practicing being an instructor where it's still a little low stakes. I'm not the main instructor yet, but seeing how this next generation, which I guess is still my generation, is sort of approaching academia and seeing where they're at, their backgrounds. And I just graded some of their essays, and to put lightly, I think they were better writers than maybe I was at that at that age going through. So, and I don't think any of mine are political science majors for that matter. But yeah.
what is the class that you're TAing for?
So the class that we have it's American federal government. It's an intro course, and by state law, state of Oklahoma law, uh, every student needs to take that class. It's sort of one of those foundational studies that's required to help students understand how government works in theory and then in reality, as well as how can they interact within our system. What rights and roles do they have? What responsibilities can they exercise? How can they be a better informed citizen, a more active citizen, and understand how sort of the system works and what their role, a part of, is it? Uh, so, yeah. So the total class, I just have these two sections, but I mean, you have anywhere like 1,400 students a semester at a time, seemingly, among other instructors, for that matter. So.
So the flip side then is the most challenging part of the work. So again, kind of looking at it from your experience working in the mayor's office, and then your experience working in the your current position as a graduate student and a teaching assistant. So.
Yeah. I would say the most challenging part sometimes of the mayor's office is trying to tend to maybe like every issue or everything that may arise, because we are an open office, so any members of the public can come to the office, and if they have any issues or having trouble navigating government, or if they have a particular issue and they don't know what part of government can handle it, or if it's even a government responsibility, sometimes you're doing two things at once. Of one, you want to make sure that you're helping inform the public on like who's the right entity to go to. Is it a government operation, something that we can handle? But then if it is, on the other side, what can we do to handle it? What are the procedures? Definitely starting out, once you're really starting to learn some of the fine details of how not only local government operates, but the city of Terre Haute operates. At first, it can seem like a lot because you always want to make sure that you do your best to help the citizen out, because you are representing the mayor and the mayor's office and the city as a whole. So there's a lot of care there, but then also making sure you can satisfy, help out your constituency, help them feel represented, by their local government. Because there's definitely a difference. And I think with the administration I was in, which was, a brand new administration, there's a lot of constituents and people. They were, very hopeful. They were seeing a change in government. Maybe through the election, they felt very mobilized to be more engaged, involved, or bring up some issues that they otherwise maybe thought they couldn't or didn't from prior administrations. So you kind of had an energized, I guess, electorate or citizenry that were ready to engage with us, and then making sure we know what to do to help them and answer the issues. That was probably the biggest challenge, because of course you take that personally. If you can't help someone, or if their situation's outstanding or extenuous, sometimes it's difficult when we can't always help. But that being the most challenging part there, with Ph.D. side of things, balancing the roles and responsibilities of being a student and somewhat of an instructor, GTA, graduate teaching assistant, balancing that, because this is definitely one of the biggest workloads, at least academically, that you're presented with, and it requires you to kind of be on your A game pretty consistently throughout the semester and make sure that you don't fall behind. A lot of these things that you deal with in undergrad and grad as well, but you sort of keep refining those soft skills and those academic skills as you move up. So undergrad at times maybe a little more forgiving, and then grad less so. And then at the PhD level, there's a lot of people dependent on you as well as you dependent on yourself. So you gotta stick on your stuff, stay on it. So, yeah, a lot of reading.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. Yeah. Oh no, yeah. I was gonna say a lot of readings, a lot of paper, a lot of small papers, and then a lot of your classwork builds up, to a comprehensive exam later. So it's not just like when that class is done, you can sort of forget about the information. Like it's all culminating into one like large comprehensive exam and a reflection on how well you understand your discipline, and do you understand it enough that you can then turn and be a part of academia. Yeah.
I was just gonna say that idea of soft skills, the previous discussion that I had with Alex Barrett, the soft skills thing came up a lot. As being something that is really important. And you do develop it somewhat, as an undergraduate student, and but kind of, when you get into the workforce, or even when you get into graduate school, it kind of takes it up to another level.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's good. And for undergrads that may watch this recording, like it's good to get involved in some extent in undergrad, not even so much, working toward like sense of belonging, making sure, you enjoy your surroundings, you're engaging with campus, but then also it gives you opportunities to fail. You get to practice those soft skills, and you have moments you excel, moments that you realize there are some skills that you need to work on personally. And undergrad's a great opportunity to get involved in groups in different settings and really, test some of your skill there.
So the next question is about how you taken concepts from public administration and sort of applied it professionally. So looking at it from like the mayor's office, and also obviously taking it into your PhD studies, what are some sort of key concepts or key information that you've applied in your work since graduation?
Let's say looking at like the city of Terre Haute in general, some of the concepts that we cover from within the MPA program are usually directly transferable. You're usually presented with, how organizations operate best, what to look out for when administrations can either falter. We talk about like public service motivation and concepts like that of how you work toward a better environment that people can work within. But as far as like concepts for public admin at the city level, name some, a few specifically don't exactly come to mind, but it's a lot of what you learn is great to take with you, because when you're actually practicing and applying it, it's so easy to get focused on sort of the day-to-day and trying to do best within your realm that you forget the bigger picture within MPA, within public admin, how administration should operate, different readings that we do throughout the program that contribute to that. But it provides a good blend, I would say, because you have the practical side that's the kind of the day-to-day. But then when you talk like long-term planning, like 5-year long-term planning or other things, you bring in a lot of concepts that you learn in MPA, and you start to apply those more directly. So I would say that's the most like transferable working for the city of Terre Haute. I know there were moments and even some methods that we practiced that we learned and used, applying those directly in my work setting, looking at different policies that we have, looking at numbers that the city has, and what the numbers are telling us, how to interpret specific data was used pretty frequently, especially with regional entities that we meet with, that when we discuss city level stuff, but also regionalism and what that looks like. So a lot of the concepts are going to be directly transferable. You may not always see it in the day-to-day, but when you put yourself in that same like sort of mindset, it allows you to be, I think, a better worker and a better administrator. Yes. And then with the PhD, directly transferable. Like I'm learning the discipline to add to the discipline. So each component, each class that you take, you're going to take probably again at the PhD level. We'll delve into it once again a little bit more, understand how it all works between, so that then you can produce your own scholarship and either take, the discipline in a similar direction, a different direction, add to it, so on and so forth. So.
Thanks for that. So what would you say is we've talked about kind of the application, but for you, what is the most memorable, or what is kind of the most personally valuable information that you took away from the MPA program, something that really kind of stuck with you?
For me, most so, and definitely be a little bit unique, but then not at the same time. I think the methods portions where I could really start to apply some ideas that I had of research and learning both qualitative and quantitative methods and how it's used in the discipline and how agencies, administrations use it. because I know directly I've been able to work with new software in my PhD because we've been using Stata, and we used a little bit of that in the NPA that you helped me with. But understanding how where the numbers work, I think that was probably the two classes from MPA that I'm using the most now, and that I'll keep using throughout my entire career. Because even methods continue to expand and go in different directions, and people argue for better ways or less ways. But I think that was the most memorable because I keep invaluable because I keep using that more than anything. But also key concepts that we use of like, was it good cell? There, if I remember that last name, good cell. Agencies, effective agencies, and then also going to like public service motivation and theories around that. It is a lot of what we've talked about so far this semester. And yeah.
Talking about like the good cell mission mystique kind of idea.
Like the ideal, what are those factors that attribute to agencies that can reach that level? That's one that I've gone back to frequently, and a book that I make sure that I buy and have at hand. And I know I used it a lot during MPA as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that one gets brought up a lot. So, good cell should update if he's still around. I'm not 100% sure if he's still around or not, but if he is, he should update that book because I think he would sell a few copies. So, and you're kind of in a unique position because you're engaged in research. You're going into a career that's very research focused. So I guess I might reframe the question a little bit and ask, what is the most significant challenge that you see associated with public administration that either you intend to research or you would like to see researched in greater depth? What are the big questions in public administration that the discipline needs to address moving forward?
I would say that there's always conversations as to that are arguing, what's the role of the government? Where I think we're in an era, especially now, where there's a lot of public distrust. I think, especially at the federal level. I mean, less so. You don't see it as much at local government, and I mean, states, local and states usually pretty decent. But definitely at the federal level, like what is the role of the federal government and federal administrations? I'd say it's a very divisive time, and the research really needs to hit hard on either reinforcing what the role is and what it isn't. I know we talk about like 80s and 90s where we really started to see the private sector get involved in responsibilities that were typical to like government and public administration. And then now we see contemporarily and even the 2000s, the role of nonprofits, non-government organizations, and see those rise. It's still a lot of the same argument that we had since kind of the founding theory, or just going to like as soon as like Woodrow Wilson of like, what is the role of public administration in a time where it's more complex than it's ever been? And what roles can we serve effectively, efficiently, equitably, and how can we implement that? I think that's always going to be the question. I know it's very fundamental, but it's always one that's in the back of our mind when you think about it. Even if you study policy, I mean, you're thinking from start to finish, like how is it going to be implemented? How do you draft it? If it's going to be, how is it going to be executed from public administrators or state level bureaucrats? Little conversations like that. I think that's always going to be the biggest challenge, especially when you have arguments that you usually like one side wants to, curtail or reduce the size of administration, whereas the other either wants to keep it as is, but try to make it most efficient or invest in it more to seek results. And definitely more timely that I hope to get into educational policy. I think when one of your major candidates, for the presidency, one of the platforms is to do away with the Department of Education. I think that's a lot. That's very timely of, research stepping in and saying, what is the role of the Department of Ed in defending it, or talking about how it can be used, how it should be, and stuff like that. So I think those conversations will always happen, and they've always been happening. But times keep changing, and we got to keep pace.
So before, well, I guess I have a couple of questions that are kind of connected, I guess. Um, the final question is, what advice or what message would you want to give to someone who's aspiring to your profession? So, so I guess for those people going into graduate school, what advice would you give to people aspiring to do that? And I guess you could also talk about, for those people who want to serve in local government and are interested in local government service, what advice would you give them as well?
I would say those interested in local government service, usually those that pursue it, and we kind of get into public service motivation, we talk about this, is like, I guess your values. Like it's if you want to directly give to your community, local government is one of the most effective ways that you can do that directly, as well as state level. That we've met with other people that worked at the city that eventually move on to like state government level positions. But understand those motivations. I get my only piece of advice is know that your actions are going to be realized probably more so or more directly so that you can see than it would at other levels. So while there may be areas that like federal or state that may pay more at times, if you want to at least start with local government, see how it works, operates, and sort of even do your maybe service, your due diligence of working directly for your community and understanding their needs and how that incorporates with how administrations work. This would be my biggest piece of advice there. And then be prepared, I guess, to see all the differing viewpoints, local government. When you have the average constituency just, walking in, your door on a day-to-day, it's a whole different perspective of what government is and how it operates that we may not always see as like studying it or as academics. On the research side or on the academic side, those that are interested in advanced degrees, whether it be like MPA or if you get into like Ph.D., my biggest piece of advice is if you want to do it, you can do it. You just have to be willing to put in the work. I think we have an excellent MPA program here. I mean, clearly graduated from it, but I think it's an excellent bridge between undergrad and like PhD because you do have some people that get a bachelor's and move directly into a PhD program if they get accepted. I don't think I could have succeeded that well, or I would have been playing too much catch up. I feel like the MPA degree prepared me perfectly to enter a PhD program because even now with some of the courses I teach, a lot of the content we had touched on or worked with. So I already have a fundamental knowledge of what I'm getting into, or I've seen readings before that we've covered similar things. Don't be intimidated. I know sometimes there's always, sort of an academic, maybe a perspective of academia, maybe some sort of elite notion, especially for people that are maybe first generation students or don't think they can do it. But try to get to know what it is, talk to your faculty, meet with your faculty, understand what grad programs really are, from MPAs to PhD. And similar with the conversation that we had a few years ago, my idea of what an MPA program was before I had talked to you was much different from after that conversation and then after I took it. When I realized like, oh yeah, this is something attainable that if I put toward the effort and energy, it's something that I can do. I encourage anybody and everybody to pursue, especially if you get an assistantship, get funding, that's huge, a part of it as well, to pursue like the next level of education, especially if they want to ahead of time. My biggest piece of advice is surround yourself with good faculty. Lean on yours here because I know you helped me a lot. Dr. Allen helped me a lot. Dr. Bergbauer helped me with some advice here and there in preparing me for my PhD and my applications as well. So lean on those around you. Yeah.
Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you'd like to add? Any other thoughts or pieces of advice or anything along those lines?
I'd say we talked about soft skills a little bit earlier. The desire the desire to what do you want to say? One, self-motivation goes a long way. And the ability to problem solve, which I know is kind of a soft skill, but like there were times when for the city of Terre Haute, the mayor would maybe present an idea of a bill. And then maybe that's the most you had to work with, or you're presented with a problem and maybe there'd be some guidance on avenues to look forward, but being like self-motivated, self-guided, directed, willing to find, a solution, willing to put in the work, find that, I think is a huge soft skill. The ability to be given some information and then take it, run with it, and produce something from it. I mean, a lot of soft skills as far as personality, ability to work with others, work around others. That's absolutely necessary, whether in city government or if you're a PhD student. You need to be willing to work with those around you. Be personable to some extent, right? You don't have to be an extrovert and introvert, but just willing to work with everybody, willing to be there, willing to help out. And I guess have that, that mentality, that public service motivation. You want to work toward the greater good. And that's the ultimate goal. So, yeah. I would say that's the last part. Yeah.
Well, Austin, thanks very much for joining today and sharing your experiences and your insight into the MPA program and sort of transitioning into the PhD program and working in local government. So good luck with your educational endeavors and keep us posted on how things are going.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on today. I know this is a sole recording, so I think I should say in the recording. Also, a good skill to know is what time zones are what time zones, because I was operating in Central Time when this original meeting was in Eastern Standard. So maybe that's a hard skill, or always know the time. I had to say that. But thank you so much for sticking around a little bit longer, having me on. And of course, if any, you're always welcome to share my email with students that might be interested or have more questions. So.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, the only speeding ticket I've ever gotten was coming to interview at Indiana State for a job. It's because I forgot that Evansville, Indiana is on Central Time, and obviously Terre Haute, Indiana is on Eastern Time. So I was supposed to be here at a certain time and thought I had plenty of time, and then I realized about a half hour into the drive that, I didn't have nearly as much time as I thought I did. So if that makes you feel any better, what people can probably take away from this is that people in academia have very poor sense of time. There's
a sense of truth to it. There's absolutely a sense of truth to that. Yeah.
But Austin, good luck and have a good rest of your weekend.
Absolutely. You as well. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.